Hi, this is Inky35, and I'm coming to you today to talk about the Gnostic sects. I left off on the last video about Marcion and some of the things I was explaining about how they get these ideas of how the God in the Old Testament is supposed to be this evil God. And I was also explaining about a lot of the videos that you see on YouTube right now, especially with the Saturn L movement and people stating that the God of the Bible is an evil God. I want you to understand that this is the ideology of Marcion. This is what I'm explaining. So you'll see people talking about Saturn L and how he's this evil God. He ends up coming into becoming Zeus. I mean, not Zeus, Yaldabaoth, which is Saturn, and how they're trying to equate this as the God of the Old Testament, and Satan. And so everyone will know who these people are that are doing this. You are going to know what their ideology is. And I'm going to show why they are incorrect with this thinking and where it came from, which I've already, if anybody just looks it up, I already told you where to look and how to find out who these cults are. There are cults that are on YouTube that practice and study this stuff. Okay. I study this stuff because I study all kinds of religions to compare them and to show how things link together. So due to the fact that now you see who these people are, and this where this ideology came from, it'll open your mind to be able to see other things as well that's going on around YouTube. So what's the truth and what's the lie? So I'm going to read what I wrote here. These are just some notes, and then I will get into more of the tales of the Gnostics, and I'm going to start reading you the ideology and what they actually say and what they present as their religion. So if you ever go and you watch what these people are stating about the God of the Old Testament or the God of the Hebrews being this demon, no, he's not. And I have been stating this for a long time. So Marcion ends up speaking about this foreign God, this alien foreign God, which actually coincides with these writings that are called the Apocalypse of the Allogenes, which has a similarity to this god named Seth, the alien god. The foreign or alien is extended to include, for instance, the Apostle Thomas, which they ended up finding, which preached the new god, which is Seth, and it gives a description that applies all the better to him whom our cosmogonies present a born Adam and Eve, not of the same carnal and inferior birth of Cain and Abel. And this is where you're going to see the ideology of the people, even in certain church sects speaking of the line of Cain and the line of Seth. You'll end up finding these people talking about Cain, like there's a line of Cain. These are called Sethians, and they can be identified by what they say. You can identify them by people saying that they are looking for the seed of Cain. They are pointing out people that they believe to be the seed of Cain. They believe that these people are descendants of the devil, literally, they really believe this, and that they are the pure line of Christ because they believe Seth is Christ. There's you probably already know that there's a lot of people talking about Cain, okay? And I'm not going to name any names here, but I find it so ridiculous as to how these people actually believe this stuff. And this is a myth. This is a complete myth, yet they're going to actually believe that the devil had a child, and this is where they get their two-seed doctrine. Now, there are people that have a mix of this Gnosticism within the Christian belief, so they believe that Cain is the son of Satan, which comes from a different line of the Adam and Eve. And then you see in the Bible, which shows that Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. But then all of a sudden you'll see these people with their ideology split, that Cain actually comes from Eve, who had sex with Satan. Okay, this is where you get the two-seed doctrine, and you can point these people out, real simple, with their religions, and they're called the Christian identity movement. They believe this doctrine. And even those that try to say they have no affiliation with the Christian identity movement and yet believe the same thing, but in a different way, these are what you call Sophians. They are of this Gnostic sect and Gnostic ideology. So they believe that the people, Seth, that was born from Adam, is the righteous one and actually would relate to Jesus Christ, the pure line. They believe they're the pure line from God. Because Cain was the corrupt line, he was the murderer. Seth is the pure line from Adam. So he's the immortal man. So Saint Epiphanius had attested a story about Seth, which was later collected by a man known as George the Senseless, which states that Seth was taken up to heaven by the Supreme Mother, who imparted the supreme secrets to him. Seth was finally later on identified with Christ, and this will be confirmed by several passages that I will be expounding upon later, because I'm going to be talking about all kinds of these Gnostic sects. Now, there's a writing called the Hypostasis of the Archons. You can find this written on number 39, number 40, and more of the writings that were found later on, which actually the collections match number 35. So like the Pistis Sophia states, we have the Hypostasis of the Archons, which begins like this. It says, upon the subject of the hypostasis of the powers and the spirit of the Father of truth, the great apostle has told us concerning the powers of darkness. It is not against flesh and blood that you have to wrestle, but against the powers of the cosmos. These are the writings or the quotations of St. Paul's epistles to the Ephesians, which you can find in chapter 6, verse 12. And in this tale of the Archon, the writer tells us how the demiurge of this lower world, believing himself to be its sole God, became so arrogant that his pride proclaimed, "There is no other God but I." And then a voice from on high answers him and says, "Thou art mistaken, Samael." So within this narrative, you will see how the story tells of the creation of the material world. And this is where you get the story of Lucifer and the fallen angels right here within. This is where it all comes from. Not many people actually go into all these studies to find out where this tale comes from. But this is it right here. This is the fall of Lucifer. Did this exist in history prior in the writings of how they were trying to incorporate things with the Old Testament? No, because what I have been explaining is that Judaism has nothing in their belief system to do with these sects that came later and the belief system of Christianity and the Gnostic Christians. What was happening in those empires is there was all kinds of problems going on in the empires, which I plan on getting into, but I just want to give a cursory glance of what's going to be discussed in this video, is that different empires were coming in. Okay, we have the Greeks, like I was explaining earlier, that the Greeks had taken over Babylon. The ancient Mesopotamian gods had died off in time because the Greeks had taken over these areas and put in their gods. We get Kronos, we get Zeus, we get even the Roman gods. We have Saturn and Jupiter and Venus and Mars, and this all is where you're going to start seeing the Gnosticism come about in the mind of these writers. And you have to understand that there was propaganda against the beliefs of these other people, because what people need to understand is that religion is power. Religion is a politic. And this is how you control the minds of people and different sects. How do you squash the opposition? With the propaganda. So in this sense of what you're hearing here about the God of the Hebrews being demonized as an evil, wicked God, which is supposed to be the devil, Lucifer, or Satan, which if anybody reads the Old Testament, they're going to be able to see that the story is a conjecture. It's just a dubious conjecture. It's not based off of, even though they try to take parts, you're going to see that this is not what the Old Testament entails, unless you want to be biased like they were. You can tell they were obviously biased against the Jews. Why were they biased against the Jews? Because Hellenism, there were different things happening in the empire, which I will explain later. I'm just trying to give you, open your mind to some things that were happening there. Within this narrative, you'll see how the story tells of the creation of the material world, because this God proclaimed himself to be the only God. Well, everybody knows that there were other gods. And so because the Jews had written that their God said that he is the only God, and this is monotheism, well, it didn't match the reality that there were pantheons of gods. And so they thought of the arrogance of a God stating that he was the one and only God with monotheism, because they didn't believe that there was only one God. They believed that there were higher gods, but of course they were trying to demonize the Jewish religion, because this is not the Jewish religion. This is a religion that stems and was starting out with this higher power, a people that were pure of the gnosis of the true God, which they called the Christ, which is later than talking about this, although they use, which is funny because they end up using the religion they don't like to explain their lineage, which is actually supposed to be the lineage of the Jewish peoples or the Hebrews. But then what they're doing is they are splitting them off, and they're saying that they are Cain, okay? They are the evil ones. They came from Seth. Seth is the Christ. Seth is the one, the pure one. So now that we know where this story of Lucifer is coming from, and how it was incorporated into, even into Christianity, because these ideas running around of this evil one, and because of what I read about what Paul says in his epistles to the Ephesians about that we are fighting not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities of the air and the powers of the cosmos. This is Gnosticism. And so sometimes, you know, I'm not wanting people to think that I am trying to put away with the Bible, or I am trying to put away with Christianity, or I'm trying to put away with anything. What I'm doing is I am explaining what history tells us. And I know there's people that are Christians that listen to me, and that's fine. I'm not trying to dogmatize anybody and make them believe or proselytize them to make them believe a certain way. I'm just explaining what was happening in these religions and how it had effects of the peoples around these surrounding areas. These are cults. Gnosticism, the Sethians, the Carpocratians or Cratians, the Cainites, the people that believe in Sophia Pistis and call her the wisdom and all this stuff. This is a cult. These are the cults. It's even around today, so it's not like anything's changed. There's a lot of people doing this now. So when I'm speaking of these things and I get questions on what I'm talking about, well, I'm talking about what history states. And I'm not trying to take sides, and some people think that I'm taking sides and I'm trying to be anti-Jew or I'm trying to be anti-Christian. No, that is not what I'm doing. I'm trying to explain that the ancient tales before all of this stuff ever existed doesn't even say any of this stuff. This is all a new philosophy within a new age. And the demonization of the God of the Hebrews, and even the Hebrews demonized these other gods, although they had received this information of the creation epics and all this stuff from the ancient Mesopotamian empires. And people that want to argue with me that no, they didn't, this is from God. Well, where do they think they're stating that their people came from? They were obviously Sumerians, because if it comes from the time of Noah, then they got to know that this is actually, you know, ancient Babylonian tales. Where do they think they came from? In any event, that's why I go into the ancient Anunnaki gods, because these are the things that existed thousands of years before Christianity, thousands of years before the Torah was written, and there are similarities of a god that would actually match who the God of the Old Testament would be from the beginning. And it's not how people with their beliefs and ideologies of Christianity try to make it, or even the Gnostics try to make it. Because you'll hear all kinds of stuff on YouTube. You'll hear all kinds of ideologies, as they'll say that one of the gods, the Mesopotamian gods, was Ea. And this Ea is supposed to be Lucifer. This Ea is supposed to be Satan. He's supposed to be the serpent that was in the garden. Well, where did they get all of this information at? Where did they receive this knowledge that for them to be able to even state all this stuff, right? They get this knowledge from Gnosticism. They are using Gnosticism, which came way later down the line from what the original text meant, what the original gods actually stood for. So this is what I want to explain, because there is so much going on that I need to explain it. So I'm going to read you the tale of the hypostasis of the Archons, because like I said, these types of beings and the way that they were explaining them later on down the line, because you'll start finding out from the original Hebrew, because like I've been saying in Judaism, and this is very important for people to understand, that although there is a Satan in the Torah or in the Tanakh, which is not mentioned but about 3 times in the Hebrew Bible. And this being, according to their Bible, especially like in Job, where he has taken away everything from Job, he doesn't have his own separate power apart from God in the tell. God shows him, according to what it states in Job, that no matter what he does to his righteous servant, even if God had removed all the hedges of protection around him, that his servant would still believe in him. So although people want to say it's like a bet, God is showing that although he had protected him from any kind of thing happening to him, that Satan had no power to touch him unless God allowed him to. Meaning that God is the authority. Satan has no authority unless God specifically gives him the authority to do it. But in Christianity, you have, and Gnosticism, you have Satan running around like he has the authority above God to destroy and do whatever and run and lie and deceit and all this other crazy ideology that came about later. You'll see that they made a dualistic religion. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes down to dualistic ideologies. And this started back in the time of the Persian Empire, which ended up having Zoroastrianism, which had to do with the thoughts of good and evil. The evil one, Ahriman, and the good God, the Lord of Wisdom, which does not mean a female. Okay, the Lord of Wisdom is not a woman, which some people try to come to me and tell me that Ahura Mazda is a female. Or some people come to me and tell me that Ahura means Lord and Mazda means wisdom, which is a female, which Mazda is a female. Whatever. Take your Gnostic stuff, twist it up as much as you want. I don't care. I get people talking to me about this stuff all the time, and that's why I made my Saturn L video, because so many people come to me with their different ideologies that they expect me to just start, getting into their ideology on a certain video, which has nothing to do with what I'm speaking about in my video, and then they go off the subject. Well, discuss it here on this video, okay? Discuss all of your problems and qualms and all of your stuff on this video, because this is about Gnosticism, and this video is going to be about the Archons, the ones that most people believe in on YouTube. So like I was saying, that there are linkings that end up going into Gnostic sects that are alike, but there are different sects that have a little bit of a different belief, and it's sort of mixed, although it's the same. Just like there's similarities between the different religions of Christianity and the Ryan and Dyson God. It's the same thing. You can see how compare the religions of the sects as well. So this foreign god of these people that believe that the descendants of the Gnostic generations means that Seth and his disciples are of a particular race, separate from the rest of humanity, and participate in the world of supreme powers. This is where you must remember that the foreign god and this god is like the same one of what Marcion mentions, which I will be getting into all this. It's just such a profound subject. I gotta tell you the way I tell you. I'm not gonna like give you my whole book but that I'm writing. But anyway, it says, so like I was mentioning, that the God that the Gnostics talk about states that there is no other God but I. Whereupon a voice from on high answers and tells him that you are mistaken, Samael. And this is a reference to the name, the blind God. This is Yaldabaoth, which the Gnostics consider to be the God of the Old Testament. And Saturn. Okay, this is where you get Saturn being Yaldabaoth, the evil god. And it says, from this point, the narrative goes on to tell us about the fabrication of this arrogant god of the material world. And so the powers of the lower universe decided to create man. So now we're going to get into the creation of man by this evil god. And this is where you're going to see them saying that Enki, the creator of man, in the ancient Mesopotamian tales, way before this religion ever came about, is Satan. This is where this is where it all stems from, okay? They try to put this to that, which does not go together. No matter how much they want to make it, that is not what the ancient texts state about these ancient gods. No matter what ideology they came up with later, because of all the other things that were floating around with religions. But anyway, it says, come, and this is the powers, this is Yaldabaoth, let us make a man. The body of this man is fashioned from the earth in the image of the high God, a reflection of whom had just been seen by the Archons in the water below. So this evil God is now going to create man in their image. So here's the evil man. Here comes the sin, the evil man, born of the devil, and all this other crap. It says, the Demiurge breathes his strength into the mouth of this new creature who immediately comes to life, but at first cannot stand upright on his feet. And afterwards, when Adam has been animated, the powers, the Archons, bring together the beast and birds for Adam to give them their names. And this is referencing Genesis 2:19. This is where you're going to start getting the idea that these Archons have to do with the Anunnaki, and that they have to do with the fallen angels. So it says that afterwards, when Adam has been animated, the powers, the Archons, bring together the beasts and birds for Adam to give them their names. And then they place him in paradise while warning him never to eat of the tree of life. Out of his side, they create Eve, his companion. And then the first man, from having been only material, Hylic, becomes ensouled, psychic. Eve herself is spiritual, pneumic, and consequently it is she who gives life to him, and that is why when he sees Eve beside him, Adam names her Mother of the Living. But the Archons themselves are dazzled at the sight of Eve, and they fall in love with her. See how they're trying to twist the story? This is where you're going to start seeing them twisting the Old Testament to fit their ideology. Of course, they're demonizing the Jewish people and saying that their God is the demon, but this is where you're going to see them using their tale to incorporate their ideology from Judaism, and to state that their God is higher than the Jews' God. See what I'm meaning? All the kingdoms do this. Their God is the God. Okay? Everybody's God is the God. So the Archons, which are the fallen angels, become, oh my goodness, they just love Eve. And they fall in love with her. Come and let us send our seed into her. They pursue her, but she makes fun of their stupidity. But then comes the son of the Demiurge, the serpent, who suggests to the woman that she should taste of the tree of life. Thereafter, in this Apocryphon, the Proto-Archon, the creator, calls Adam, who having sinned, knows that he is naked and hides himself, upon which the first couple are exposed from paradise. And I just want to mention something right here. I have put out a video called Who is Apsu, Ea, Anki? In this video, I'm explaining what the ancient texts state. And it would have to do with a goddess called Ninmah, or Ninharsag. And it would have to do with Anki, who would have been the Adam of man, the one who is considered the Adam. And it can also mean the Atom as well, the living water. If anybody listens to it, just keep in mind what I'm saying here and then listen to what I'm stating there, and you will see what the original texts were actually implying, because this is starting to move further away from what the original text state. So, which I'll get into all of this again and even further in this series. So right here, after the birth of Cain and Abel, engendered normally by Adam and Eve, by normal intercourse, after the murder of Abel, his brother, the birth of Seth is, in this case, passed over in silence, nor does Seth play any notable part in the rest of the treatise. But then the Apocryphon diverges again from Genesis, and the creator of the base world, displeased with men who have greatly multiplied, orders Noah to build the ark and prepares to unloose the deluge. Now, I'm going to call this delusional, because they are completely taking this out of context from what the original translation states in the Mesopotamian tale, although they're trying to break down the tale within the Hebrew Bible, which talks about a flood. But they're making this God, the one who sends the flood, because of mankind's, according to the Genesis, evil ways and their wicked practices, that he wanted to wipe them out. So this God that is telling Noah to build the ark and prepare to unloose the deluge is supposed to be evil. Now, in the original Mesopotamian tales, the God that is actually telling Ziusudra to build an ark is the god Anki. This is how you're going to start seeing where people are stating that Anki is supposed to be the serpent and Anki is supposed to be evil. Because in the ancient Mesopotamian tale, it's Anki who is telling Ziusudra to, which is Noah, to build an ark to escape the wrath of Enlil. Now, Enlil is the one who hated mankind in the ancient Mesopotamian tale. He's the one who wanted to destroy man because of their noise. He wasn't the original creator of man, but he wanted to destroy man. I'll get into this later. I just wanted to interject right there. While the orders from this God that is supposed to have created the base world, the Diverges, tells Noah to build the ark, this episode is supposed to take place upon a mythic mountain called Mount Seir, S-E-I-R. And Horea, or Norea, which is the daughter of Eve and of superior birth, wishes to go into the ark, but Noah, inspired by the perverse creator, forbids her. She blows up the hole in construction, at which it catches fire and it's burnt up. And Noah rebuilds the ark. Meanwhile, a violent quarrel breaks out between Norea and the lower Archons. In response to the cries of Norea, the great angel Heleleth descends from below, the Holy Spirit. His aspect is like gold, his vesture like snow, to overcome and subdue the lower powers. A time is created to which they are subjected so that they may not again defile the incorruptible generation. So right here you can see that this does not match the original accounts of what the Jews had written in Judaism. And then you can also see why this becomes heretical. Although they took some of the ancient writings and then incorporated them into their own vision of what they wanted it to mean, you'll see that this Heleleth, this Archon, actually has something to do with the god Yaldabaoth too, one of his sons, according to another version of Gnosticism, which is called the Pistis Sophia, which I will be getting into. I'm just reading a certain part of the hypostasis of the Archons. So anyway, this is what it says. So after this exposition of the earthly genesis, the book recounts the history of Sophia, also called Pistis Sophia. Logically, the second part of the treatise should have been placed at the beginning of the work before what we have just summarized, for it describes the creation of the lower heavens. And so when I read you the Pistis Sophia, you're going to end up finding out, you're going to see the differences, but then you're going to see how they link, but then they have their own ideologies. But in any event, Sophia, it tells us, desire to produce without a partner a creation modeled upon the heavenly pattern, but she fell. And there is a veil between the higher realms of light in the inferior aeons, and darkness extends everywhere below the veil. The darkness becomes matter, which is interesting because people call it dark matter, right? And it is within matter that Sophia, on her creative work, which is that of a monstrous being shaped like a lion, male and female at the same time. This is where you get your androgynous being, which is supposed to represent a demonic being, androgyny. Opening its eyes and seeing nothing around it but dark matter, this being is, in its ignorance of the higher world, grows proud of its solitude and exclaims in the words we have already found in the preamble of this writing, I am God, and there is no other God but I, thereby committing a grave sin. So what they were doing when they were making these writings was stating that the God of the Hebrews, who proclaimed himself to be the one and only true God, is the devil in his arrogance, or not the devil, Satan, the Demiurge. And this is where you will see them taken away from the monotheistic view due to the fact that there were many, many, many other gods, which is true. That's true. So they found it arrogant of there to be only one God, the one God notion within monotheism of the Jewish religion, because of course they don't want their God to be the one God, the God on high, because they're a completely different sect of peoples. But they wanted to demonize the Jews, and they wanted to demonize the Jewish God. So this is where you're going to start seeing the demonization of the Jews. And this is what you see today. But although they have all of this stuff written out, the reason why I mention, sometimes people don't understand what I'm talking about when it comes down to Christianity, because I don't have anything against people that believe in Jesus or believe any way they want. They can believe any way they want to believe. I don't care. I'm not trying to make people believe me or believe in a certain way. They can believe however they want. People are people. They're going to believe what they want. I can't change that. But when they try to tell me that their religion and that I'm supposed to be somehow confused or that I've been duped or something, no, I haven't been duped. I haven't been deceived, and I am looking at all of these things. So I understand what's going on here. I'm not confused. I think the confusing part is that most people that are within a religion, which everyone believes their religion, no matter what religion it is the truth. They normally don't look at all this stuff. They normally don't get into all of these things. But I do. Because I'm not held by a dogmatism. So that's why I'm going to explain all the religions that are the main types of religions. In any event, it states, once he says that he is God, "Thou art mistaken, Samael. If anyone has existed before me, let him show himself to me," replies Samael. Sophia then comes down from the worlds above, and she introduces light into matter and then withdraws herself into the realms of chaos. Then the evil Archon, Samael, this is another name for Yaldabaoth, creates for himself 7 sons, each both male and female, who are to preside over the 7 planets. And he says to them, "I am the God of the universe." But Zoe, the daughter of Sophia, reprimands him in her turn. "Thou art mistaken, Sakla," which name adds to the text, and it's translated Yaldabaoth. So Zoe breathes upon the Creator, and her breath turns into an angel of fire who cast Yaldabaoth into the depths of Tartarus at the bottom of the abyss. Now, can anybody see where I'm going here? This is where you are going to start seeing people on YouTube who is trying to state that who rules over the abyss? Okay, well, let's see. You're going to see people stating that Anki rules over the abyss. He rules over the waters. He rules over the universe, which is made of waters. He's called the Apsu, the Abzu, and this is how they start correlating him as an evil Demerge. Does that mean that's true? No, because these are ideologies that are being twisted from what the original accounts actually state. You see, they're using the Old Testament to twist this into some evil being, to demonize the God of the Hebrews, like I said, to because of the fact that there were other gods. So they're picking a different god, right? Which is a goddess. They're picking a goddess. This is where they're picking the goddess. You're going to start seeing some things that are really interesting, but this is where you start getting the stories of Enki being the Lord of the Abyss, which is the Abzu and the Apsu. He's the Apsu, Abzu. Apsu means the exact same thing, which is the waters or the semen. One who knows the waters, the Zu, the heavenly waters. One who knows the waters, the Heavenly Father. So, after Yaldabaoth enters the depths of Tartarus at the bottom of the abyss, Sabaoth, the son of Yaldabaoth, seeing the power of the great angel engendered by the breath of Zoe, repents and realized that his father and mother were matter, and offers up to Zoe the hymn of his repentance. Sophia and Zoe then install him in the seventh heaven, just below the veil which separates the lower world from the light. Sabaoth fashions for himself the great chariot with four-faced cherubim and a multitude of angels who sing psalms to the sound of harps. Now, what do I see in this symbology right here? Right here, this would actually be the God of the Old Testament, Sabaoth. Who does Sabaoth represent in, just by a comparison? Who does Sabaoth represent? Sabaoth represents Jupiter, okay? And now, I'm not saying that he is Jupiter. I'm saying this is who he would represent. So, who is Sabaoth in the Bible? He's called the Lord of Hosts, the Lord of Armies. That's what the original intent of the name Sabaoth means in the Bible. So, the Lord God of the Bible is called the Lord of Hosts. He is the Lord of Armies. So, you get them using this name in this tale to make Sabaoth the son of the evil Demiurge, who is asking for repentance for his evil father, who proclaimed himself to be God and God alone. But he is the righteous son who was given reign over the seventh heaven. Now, what does the four-faced cherubim mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means the ruling of the solstice and the equinox in the sky, north, west, east, and south, like the vision in Ezekiel. This is what they're doing here, okay? I'm telling you, it's twisted like you wouldn't believe, and that's why I'm wanting to explain what they did in their writings. So, this chariot is the chariot of Ezekiel, which represents the solstice and the equinox. And obviously, he's the ruler over the universe, and the multitude of angels are the stars. That doesn't mean that they're literal stars, but they're the stars of heaven. So if you hear people talking about this stuff, you're going to realize what sect they're in or what cult they're in. And I'm not in a cult, although I'm talking about, but I'm talking about the ones that are really into it. Like, yes, he is Satan. He is this. Those are the people I'm talking about. The ones that'll attack you, because I've been attacked by some, and I mean, they attack me because of the fact that I'm talking about Jupiter, and everything that they're saying is so twisted because I'm actually stating the opposite of everything that they're saying, and they can't handle it. So they'll start coming to me. They'll start calling me names. They'll start putting me down and trying to tell me I'm crazy, I'm an idiot, and I'm all this. Although I'm showing you right here, and I'm showing you how distorted and divergent it is from what the original tale actually states. Anybody can see it's divergent. So in the narrative and how it closes in this. It says, because of the afflictions of Yaldabaoth, when he sees from below the glory of his repentant son, much of this treatise is manifestly the abridgment of a certain book of Nerea, which she's supposed to be the holy, daughter of Eve, and the wife of Noah. And this is where you'll find Irenaeus, one of the church fathers, who ends up talking about this in his Adversus Heresies 1:30. So if you read this, you'll find out what he's saying about what they're talking about, which I guess I can make a video on this and go into what he's saying, one of the early church fathers, about this heresy in what they're stating here. And it really is a heresy because it's not really the original. This is a philosophy. This is to demonize, like I said, the Jews' God from the monotheistic view of him stating that he is God and God alone. They have the ideology of polytheism, which, yes, polytheism was all around. But I will get into all this later. I know I'm running into the hour mark here, so I don't want to take up too much time. I'm just going to end it here. That I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to finish on Yaldabaoth in the next one. I'm also going to bring in what Irenaeus actually tells in this book of the heresies against what the Gnostic sects are saying here. And this is really good to know. So, like, you're informed of these religions, and that way, when someone comes up to you and they're saying something, you're going to know exactly who they are. You will know exactly who they're from. This is how they try to identify people, too. But you're going to know who they are. But anyway, I'm going to end this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I have more to come on all these different sects. Eventually, I mean, since this is going to be a long series, there is much to go over within all of these different occults and cults. So anyway, I will be talking to you all soon. Hope you have a great day. This is Enki 35.